Well, we have arrived to the day before Getaway Day, and the Labor Day holiday weekend lies ahead. We will not have a show this Sunday night. We will be back on Monday at 7:35 p.m. In the meantime, you need to know what the weather is going to be doing over the next 5 or 6 days. And that's why we're here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours, and you can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast, and we recommend that you use the coupon code.
Summer 2024.
And the reason why we recommend this is because if you do, you will get.
N% off, believe it or not.
Yes, exactly. So here we are. I did hit 90 for the third day in a row. And for the third time this month, I did not get under 60 this morning, however. The low was 61. So for the first time after 9 consecutive days of lows in the 50s, that streak is broken. And here in North Georgia, we may actually see something we haven't seen in about 2 weeks, and that's rain.
Well, it didn't get out of the 70s here today, and it was rather humid. I was, talking with Renata. I said maybe we should open the windows and turn the air conditioner off, but she didn't want to do that because of the humidity. So, I mean, I would have done it, but I guess they're getting a little sensitive now. So,
Yeah. Well, I noticed this morning around 11 o'clock when I was looking at the dew points, they were hovering around 60, 59, 60, 61-ish, which isn't terrible if your temperatures are in the mid 80s. But the temperatures being in the 70s, the spread between the dew point and the temperature was not that wide. So, yeah, it did feel a little humid, I'm sure, for
not,
you.
not much of a dew point depression, if you will.
Correct. Absolutely. Uh, Trying to think of what exciting things we have to talk about. Well, actually, Joe, if you get your radars ready for areas in central Pennsylvania down to the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, it's pretty active there. We've got a severe thunderstorm watch in that zone. And there's a lot of activity on the radar. I noticed a lot of lightning strikes. You're kind of almost like like a hairpin warm front that is setting up, where the warm sector is to your west and to your south, and that onshore flow is just sort of pinched into New Jersey and easternmost Pennsylvania down into northern Delaware.
Well, we pointed this out last night that places well south and west of here were going to be suffering not only with heat, but rather high levels of humidity, and that was going to be the prime area for the prime zone for thunderstorm activity. And as you just mentioned, Joe, there are watches up in that zone, so we will take a look at it as soon as I get the radar up.
Okay, and while you're getting that ready, and I will just very quickly go over some of the advisories that are up and watches. We've got, as I said, we have this severe thunderstorm watch that covers much of south central Pennsylvania, central and western Maryland, and into northern Virginia. There's also flood watches for pretty much the same zone. The flood watches extend a little further north, outside of the severe thunderstorm watch in north central Pennsylvania. Leftover heat advisories in eastern Virginia and northeastern North Carolina. Also, a few leftover heat advisories in southwestern West Virginia and southern Ohio and northwest Alabama and northern Mississippi. And that looks like a different color orange out in the west. Yep, that's a heat advisory. Okay. For some reason, it looks brighter than the ones in the east. But yes, we do have heat advisories up for north central Oregon and the eastern half of Washington going into northern Idaho. And other than that, weather around the rest of the country, got a few flood watches in northeast Minnesota with a waning severe thunderstorm watch in northwest Wisconsin and southeast Minnesota, and a couple of counties in New Mexico with flood watches. So otherwise, the rest of the country just enjoying a typical late August day. And got a lot of lightning strikes going on in Western Virginia, northeastward up into central Maryland, and these are and also into south central Pennsylvania. So pretty active radar there in those areas, which our Joe Rayo will now, of course, grace us with that activity.
Okay, well, first of all, just a check of the temperatures in and around the zones that I've been looking at. Frederick, Maryland, 72. Annapolis, Maryland, 77. Washington, D.C., 77. Baltimore, 73. So it's not overly hot, but I would presume that the humidity is the factor that is helping to drive some of these showers and storms. You can see them across south central Pennsylvania and also across a good part of, and there's nothing, there's not a squall line, for example, or there's not a broad area of a broad solid area of rain and showers and thunderstorms. Basically, they are scattered throughout the zone. This is the Washington D.C. Sterling, Virginia radar, and you can see the zones where yellows and oranges are indicating that there's activity that is rather potent and possibly severe enough, which is why the Weather Service, why the Storm Prediction Center has issued severe thunderstorm watches for those areas. But Northern Virginia, portions of Western Maryland, South Central Pennsylvania, and also the Panhandle of West Virginia, all under at least some kind of shower and storm activity.
By the way,
Same.
all those cities you mentioned, plus a whole bunch of others in Virginia, in Maryland, northern West Virginia, all made it up to 90 or better at some point today. So the thunderstorms are probably what's brought the temperatures down. But all these places were in the quote warm sector today. So I'm just looking here at the max temperatures. Uh, Washington D.C. got to 89. Baltimore at the airport got to 90. A lot of temperatures that topped right at 90 in a lot of places.
Yeah, and this is a different view. This is from State College, Pennsylvania, and you can see again widely scattered thunderstorms in and around central Pennsylvania, moving into the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, and also blowing up over portions of western Maryland. And again, some of these are rather intense, and the potential of being able to bring damaging winds and maybe even a touch of hail. So the activity, certainly the heavy activity, is out there. You can see here, this is from Dover Air Force Base. And again, it looks like the activity, especially in the vicinity of Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and also again in a part of south central Pennsylvania. There really doesn't appear to be all that much in the way of movement, Joe. I mean, generally speaking, slowly moving in toward the east. But remember, and you pointed this out yesterday, that right across south central New Jersey and part of southeastern Pennsylvania is where the front is located. I guess you can call it the dew point front. Down here, we probably have dew points that are at or above 70 and helping the thunderstorm activity to be rather significant. But to the north, it's not only cooler, but it's also not quite as humid, a more stable atmosphere. And so if we do see any precipitation, let's say in the New York tri-state area, I'll bring up the radar right now, and it's not
And by the
showing much.
way, I just want to just point out they have a flash flood warning up and this is in Virginia. They have I'm sorry, in Maryland. Well, wait a minute, hold on. Uh, this is from the Weather Service in Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Okay, so I'm looking at these counties here. It's Mineral County and Allegheny County. So it's Mineral County in West Virginia, Allegheny County in Maryland, but then there's another one here. Um, oh, this is the one. So this is in Virginia. Flash flood warnings, southwestern Fairfax County in Northern Virginia, Prince William County in Northern Virginia, including the cities of Manassas and Manassas Park.
Uh-oh.
And yes, and
Well, I have a cousin who lives in Manassas, so
Well, the ones in central Allegheny and northeastern Mineral counties, because you mentioned the slow movement, 2 to 4 inches of rain have already fallen, and they're the Weather Service office letting saying that there could be a rainfall rates of 1.5 to 3 inches an hour, and an
oh,
additional 1 to 2 inches possible there.
well, for those of us who live up here in the Hudson Valley, from especially last year and southwestern Connecticut this year, Dennis Cassia, one of our uh, folks on the chat board, he certainly had his fair share of that kind of weather a couple of weeks ago. This is the kind of weather, Joe, where when the atmosphere is loaded with moisture, you don't really need all that much of a disturbance to bring down a heck of a lot of rain in a very short interval of time. And yeah, if you've already received 2 to 4 inches and you've got the potential for rates of 1 to 3 inches additional per hour coming in the next few hours, that doesn't spell very good news. And we just saw on the radar. Let's go back because there's nothing showing up of significance on the New York radar. But if you take a look again at the radar from Washington D.C., Sterling, Virginia, all of these areas that have deep shades of red, like down here and over here, I mean, these are the zones where they're seeing some very heavy activity, and because of the slow movement, that activity is going to lead to flash flooding. So
And there's a lot of lightning strikes with all those with what's on the radar. Just going off the satellite loop.
I could imagine.
A lot of
You know,
lightning strikes.
in fact, why don't we I'll just go quickly to the GOES viewer, the imagery viewer, northeast, and we'll go to the animation loop, and let's see. Oh my goodness! Look at that! All of this. Joe just mentioned lightning strikes, and if you want to see the skies light up, certainly down here across western Maryland, northern sections of Virginia, portions of West Virginia, and even into the middle part of Pennsylvania. That is where it's all happening right now. But again, up here in New England and much of New York State and northern New Jersey, again, the air is not quite as humid and cooler, more stable. So you're not likely to see this type of activity coming our way, at least in the next few hours.
All right, so let's go back to the. I got the wide satellite loop here, so we'll go back to that, and there's got a few other places to point out. Uh, there was a fair amount of rain across Louisiana today, and that has moved northward, and you can see the lightning strikes have now pushed into the northern part of the state and up into northern Mississippi. Also, we have sort of a snaky line of thunderstorms that runs from Minnesota all the way down into western Kansas and even into eastern New Mexico, northwest Texas, and the rotation that's north of North Dakota. So this is the upper low and the next deep trough, and behind that is the dry air mass that's going to be coming into the Great Lakes and the Northeast and Ohio Valley and the Mid Atlantic states. Well, it, the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley will start to feel it on Sunday, and everybody else will start to feel it Sunday night and Monday. So there's the wide sat radar view of what's going on up in Minnesota near the Wisconsin state line. You've got a series of severe thunderstorm warnings there, and there's a working tornado warning as well, just east of Minneapolis. They got it boxed off for tornadoes, and some big storms cutting across Iowa. A little less intense, but still a few intense cells through much of north central and northwest and western Kansas, down into northwest Texas and westernmost Oklahoma, and into eastern New Mexico. And then you can see also what's going on in the Gulf states with rain from East Texas across much of Louisiana, except now the south, because all of this is lifted up northward. And we're seeing some pretty hefty thunderstorms going on in central and northern Mississippi, and they're just kind of moving very, very slowly northward and northwestward. A little bit of action along the west coast of Florida from earlier. That's kind of wound down a bit, not too much today. and to the east, a couple of showers and a couple of thunderstorms southeast of Atlanta in Georgia. And from the stuff that's up, you can see all the green boxes are all flash flood warnings in Virginia and Maryland and in northern West Virginia. And we've got a few severe thunderstorm warnings going down through I-81 in Western Virginia toward, right near the Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia triple point. The Storm Prediction Center, the severe thunderstorm watch continues for Northern Virginia into South Central PA. Also, we've got severe thunderstorm watches up in eastern Minnesota, extend just down to about the the Iowa border, and that line again is part of that cold front that's going to be arriving over the weekend. Now, tomorrow, SPC has marginal risk from eastern Missouri northeastward into Michigan, and they indicate for southeast Michigan an area of slight risk for severe weather that goes right over Lake Huron and maybe even on the other side. Even though that's Canada, I would imagine you probably would extend it into Canada, but it's not the Weather Service's jurisdiction, obviously.
Well,
And we go,
Ontario, they and that it looks like if you play with the marginal risk boundary line, it looks like that Toronto, for example, would be just a wee bit outside of the threat of marginal risk activity. Although, as you point out, Joe, that one area of slight risk may just about make it into a part of Ontario.
right.
So, yeah.
And the other marginal risk tomorrow is Southwest Virginia, North Carolina, northwestern South Carolina, and northeast Georgia. I'm sort of also the marginal risk line goes probably right through my front yard. The way this is drawn, nothing in the northeast down to northern New Jersey and northeastern Pennsylvania from the standpoint of convection, and nothing in the plains and nothing much in the Rockies or in the western part of the United States. Now we'll go to day 3, and this is for Saturday into Sunday. They've got a marginal risk up for New York State, westernmost Massachusetts and Connecticut, to cutting Long Island in half, passing south of New York City from Sandy Hook down to about Trenton and Philadelphia, continuing to just south of Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, northern Virginia, most of West Virginia, and eastern Ohio. And that's with the cold front that's going to bring in the lovely air mass for next week. And as far as rainfall is concerned, obviously what's going on in the flash flood zone is going on in the flash flood zones tonight. So this is from 8 o'clock tonight onwards. Generally, it's a half to 3/4 of an inch up and down the eastern seaboard with some pockets of an inch and a half here and there. We have some heavier rains over the next 7 days for central and south Florida. Also along the Gulf Coast, we continue to see an area of 10 inches plus come between Houston and the Louisiana state line, and a pretty broad area of 5 to 10 that goes to just south of New Orleans into southeast Louisiana, and then on the Texas side, it goes about halfway down the coast, not quite to Corpus Christi. Also, some heavier rains in West Texas, where we're talking about inch and a half to 2.5 to 3 inch amounts there over the next 7 days. And meanwhile, in the west, outside of a few hundredths here and there, it's pretty quiet. So everything's
A lot of what you see in the Northeast, can we say, is front loaded? I mean,
yes.
once we get past Sunday, midday Sunday, that's it. It'll be dry probably right on through the end of next week.
Totally agree. That's the way everything seems to be going here. So our high in eastern Canada starts to move out. We have this onshore flow for tomorrow. Now, some of the leftover moisture from the storms tonight are being that moisture is being carried eastward into New Jersey and Long Island. It weakens tomorrow morning, so there might be a couple of showers overnight in a few places into tomorrow morning. And then once that goes away, I think weather conditions should improve for the latter part of the day. Although that onshore flow might cause some problems in trying to break out through the cloud cover. So that's probably going to be an issue tomorrow. And then Saturday, with winds going a little more southerly ahead of the next cold front, I still think a lot of the dayside Saturday probably winds up being dry, unless some renegade storm forms ahead of this front. And then the main action seems to want to come during Saturday night and past the peak. They peak out in Pennsylvania and in West Virginia and on up into upstate New York. But then by Sunday morning, they're pretty much mostly done. Although the model does imply that maybe there might be some leftover showers around Sunday morning, and then the dew point front kind of swings into action during Sunday afternoon, and we start to see some real improvement with the dropping dew points for Monday, and that nice big high builds in. The Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Northeast, Northern Mid-Atlantic, even down into the Mid-Atlantic states. And I think maybe some of that dry air will funnel down the Appalachians to me, which will be really nice. And yeah, as far as next week, Joe, that high holds on pretty much all week long. And the next cold front on the models is not until next Saturday night with another high behind that one. So that's pretty interesting. You know what else is interesting, Joe?
What?
Um, well, let me see. Which run do I have here? This was the 12Z run. So let's look at the 18Z run. The GFS, well, the Hurricane Center has been highlighting this. See if they updated this. Um, Whoops, hang on a second. Let's go to the 7-day. So they have now, they raised it now to a 50% chance that this system in the central Atlantic, which is very poorly organized, by the way, but they note that the thunderstorms have become a little more concentrated near the axis of that disturbance, and it's forecast to track to the west. They say conditions appear conducive for gradual development, and a depression could form early next week as it moves west toward the Lesser Antilles, and then forecast to continue west-northwest across portions of the eastern and central Caribbean by the middle of next week. The tropical wave that's behind it is dealing with a lot of shear off the African coast, but perhaps once it bypasses that, if it survives, maybe you might see some development next week of that as it moves on to the west. The other thing of note, Joe, is on the 18Z run of the GFS, and also on the Canadian, and I think the European has it too. The GFS does have a strong tropical storm over the western tip of Cuba, which it makes into a hurricane in the central Gulf of Mexico, and then moves it on to the Gulf Coast. So for the first time in many days, models seem to be picking up on some development here. So I wouldn't focus on track on one run, obviously. But here's the Canadian, which has it even stronger. And there you go. It goes right over western Cuba, and that's as far as it goes. And the European has it also in the Northwest Caribbean by the time we get to day 10. So the
What about
models,
what about the artificial intelligence European?
the AI,
Yes.
the AI has it too. The AI has it further south. So let's go to the Western Atlantic view. So there it is okay, you see it there? There it goes.
Yeah.
So it actually doesn't do much with it until it gets into the Central Caribbean. And then it's pretty far south on the AI run. It goes uh, almost to the Belize, then gets deflected northwestward toward the Yucatan Peninsula, and then it just starts to wrap up and turn northward. What does it get down to? Like a 960-ish hurricane going into Louisiana. By the time we get to this is for 2 weeks from now. Obviously, it's a long ways away yet. But we've been saying how the models have been showing next to nothing, and all of a sudden, it seems as if they've woken up a little bit today. So perhaps the clue on all of this is the fact that the Pacific is going quiet after a spurt of activity there. So there's also a couple of other little lows running around in the Atlantic too. So perhaps we're getting close to the time where the The hurricanes are going to start, they're going to start forming. Oh, and by the way, in the Central Pacific, thank you, David Schwartz, for hitting super chat and reminding me of tropical storm Hone, expected to strengthen again to a hurricane across the international date line, Joe. There it
Okay.
is. There it is on the map. It's at almost 175 west. Let's see what they did on their forecast for that. Central North Pacific, blah, blah, blah. Right now, it's a minimal tropical storm. Um, long discussion, blah, blah,
I
blah.
love that. One of the I love that the middle part of the discussion.
Right.
What that
Definitions for hone is mischievous.
yeah.
Mischievous, or to
What a
tease.
tease.
Yes. Well, they strengthen it. They strengthen it as it goes west northwest. They bring it to 65 knots after it crosses the international date line at 28.7 north and 175.2 east. So, um, and we had one last year that crosses the international date line. So every once in a while, uh, these things do happen. But overall, the Pacific is Hector lasted what 2 days, and Gilma is what's left of Gilma is just east of the Big Island of Hawaii as a tropical depression and probably going to weaken into a remnant low in the next 12 hours or so.
Yes, and Tom Contino on the chat board looking for trouble from that system we were talking about in the Atlantic, saying, "Any chance it turns up the East Coast?"
Oh, Tom. He just had a flooded basement last week from that. So now he wants a hurricane on top of it.
And Vincent Croce, Joe and Joe, have we Joe and Joe, we have anyone from the International Dateline and chat crew? LOL.
Well, you
Yeah,
never know.
we'll have to check to see if any of our viewers are from French Polynesia.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, there's an island that Honey just passed. Was it Lawson Island that I read? Uh, Hold on. Let's see on the public advisory. It's 900. It's 565 miles southeast of Midway and 930 miles west of Honolulu, moving west northwest or 290 degrees at 7 miles per hour. So that's what's left of mischievous Honey, if I'm
And
saying.
and Tom Contino also asked very early in the show, "Did Joe Rayo get a haircut?" Yes, I got a haircut. Mrs.
He has a wedding. He had to go to the beauty parlor. Now he's got to go pick up his dress and look all snazzy for his daughter's wedding.
Yes, and my
Well, that's
40th and my
and your
40th.
30th anniversary.
I tell you, I kid Renata. I said, "Can you imagine? It's been 40 years. It went right on by like a century."
The minutes fly by like hours.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's do a little Briller Jeopardy. By the way, everybody keep Scott in your thoughts because he's busy taking care of his mom, and it's not easy when you have an elderly parent that's not doing well, but she seems to be coming along, and uh, just uh, just keep him in your thoughts and prayers behind with what's happening here. So we're going to go. We're doing average lows, Joe, in the month of August. Okay,
Okay.
lows. So we're going
Low.
to
How
lows
how low can you go?
and pretty low. Um, let's start with Barrow, Alaska.
Oh, give me a break. We're starting with Barrow, Alaska for a low temperature in August?
Yes, we
That's more
are.
that's more like a bonus question than the actual list. All right,
Well,
I'll
take a
take a
shot.
I'll take a crack at it. 38.
That's actually a fairly good guess. It's not that far off. Um, Anthony, at 10, you're a little too early for that. Tyler Fiega is at Snake Country at 35. And Carol T. Karras is 36. That's a little high. Patrick Darcy at 35. Also in Country. I'm trying to see if anybody got it here. Michael McGuire, 32, a little too low. Mike Waterhouse in Snake Country at 33. So that leaves Dennis Cassia, who does the math and comes up with 34. 34, Joe.
Yay for Dennis Cassia, who I'll see on Sunday with his lovely wife, Kim.
Helena, Montana.
I've not been to Helena. I've been to Great Falls and Lewistown. Helena, Montana in August. How about how about 51?
Ring your bell. Ring the bell for yourself, Joe. You banged it
Really?
on the nose at 51.
Fantastic.
New York City Park, at Central Park, the average low for the month of August is.
Oh, in New York City?
Mhm.
Oh, how about
and it, and it's about 2 degrees higher than it was when we were kids.
63?
Oh, that's 63 for August. That's too low.
Oh, well,
That's too low.
I'm
William
sorry.
Uber's at 66. Norm Roberts at 65. Um, Chuck Cardillo is at 67. Christina Petey is in State Country at 68, and so is Anthony at 68. So Vincent Croce now nails it at 69. 69 is the average low for the month of August. I guess based on the new normals, that because it has gone up a couple of degrees since when you and I were back in the day. International Falls, Minnesota.
How about boom, 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 boom. 51?
Very close. It's Snake Country for you at 51.
Wow.
Um, and I'm just looking, everybody's a little high here with the 60s here. 51 is close. Um, people putting up 51, 52. Tyler Fienga bangs it at 80, at the 50. I'm sorry, 50. 50. And we were speaking of Toronto, which we were earlier. Toronto in Ontario, in Canada,
Toronto.
in North
Toronto.
America.
Um, how about hmm, how about 62?
Oh, State Country again. Keith James II, right off the bat, gets it at 61.
Uh,
61. All right, here's the bonus. You ready for the bonus?
yeah.
42. Was a little bit much in a hurry there. Mount Washington.
Mount Washington. Now I know why we had the first one as part of the. All right, Mount Washington. Uh, next round.
4 people on the chat board have already gotten it because of my slip,
Oh, really?
which apparently you didn't hear. Let's go 5, 6 people, 7 people.
Well, about 42.
And ring the bell for the 7 or 8 people that got it and for yourself. Yeah,
Ding ding.
that was a slip on my part. I don't know why I did that.
I don't know either.
Uh, well, by the way, I turned the camera just to let everybody know. I turned the camera a little bit today because JJ was sleeping on the bed and you could have gotten a shot of him. I don't know if he was there when the show started, but
But then he jumped
he
off.
was, but he jumped off. Yeah, he's back on the floor. He likes being on the floor. It just is so much cooler because the air conditioning vent is behind his
Now,
rear end.
now, can you
So,
can you hear everyone quiet? Can you hear my dog?
yes.
Can you hear him in the back? Oh, he's upstairs. We have guests coming for the wedding. My wife's cousin, Maria, and Maria's mom, who, God bless her, is 94 years old.
Oh,
And
weren't they there recently for something else?
yes, they were. But the last time they came, they flew in. But this time, Maria decided that she was going to come and drive from Rush, Kentucky to Putnam Valley, a ride of approximately 10 or 12 hours. And you know, I don't know how Rihanna's aunt would put up with something like that. 94 years old, and you're in a car. Of course, they must have stopped several times along the way, but
Well, I would think.
yeah.
Um, Todd Contino wants to see JJ. Let me see if I can get him back on the bed. Hey, JJ, why don't you go back on the bed? Go back on the bed because Tom Contino wants to see you. He's refusing. He turned his head to me. He looked at me and he now turned his head the other way. No, he's not doing it. Not this time. We'll try again next Monday because that's when our next show is going to be, Joseph. It's going to be next Monday at
Let me
7:35 p.m.
one little tidbit before we end the show tonight. This is thanks to Rob Friedowitz, who is the most incredible climatologist of Central Park and New York City. But anyway, he writes that since 1970 through last year, 2023, August 29th, which is today, has been the average date of the last reading at Central Park in the 90s or 100s. It has happened as early as July 26th that we've had the last reading at least at 90 degrees, and July 27th in 1986 and 1982, respectively. So July 26th, 1986, and July 27th, 1982, the last 90-degree day of the season or of the year. However, it has happened as late as October 2nd in 2019. I remember that. However, in the years of the present decade, the average date for the last 90, and this is for now this decade, has been September the 6th. So if you folks are wondering about 90-degree days, they are going to be very few and far between in the coming days ahead. We may have had our last chance yesterday, but it's possible. I would suppose it could warm up again sometime later in September. Certainly, early October is a very, very rare occurrence to get a 90-degree temperature. But in any case, from 1970 through 2023, today, August 29th, the average date of the last reading at Central Park in the 90s or even 100s. Joe.
All right, and Pacific County Fishing asking about the winter, and it's a complete waste of time to come up with something. It just
I just
is,
thought,
and we're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to come up with their usual forecast. I guarantee you that 9 out of 10 of them will say that the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states are going to be buried in snow from November to April. Okay, what you want to hope for is if they all come out and say that the winter is going to be mild and uneventful, the Farmer's Almanac just, apparently is on that page this winter. If we can get a whole bunch of people to come out on that side of the equation, I will take the other side of that trade.
well, incidentally, I went to my local Barnes and Noble earlier today and purchased the old Farmer's Almanac. And Joe, the forecast for the New York tri state area for this winter mild and dry,
Right.
believe it. And
All right.
the thing is they had such a horrendous prediction last year. They had snow all over the United States.
Well, that's why I'm saying the best thing that can happen is that everybody goes on that same side of the trade and say that the winter's going to be another non-event winter. That's what you want to hear. The more people that do that, the better.
Well, the interesting thing is that they said that the accuracy last year was 66%. This is the old Farmer's Almanac, which is slightly lower than their normal or their traditional percentage of 80% accuracy. And
How do you measure that? How do you come up with that number? How do you measure that?
I don't know how they measured that, but my point of reference here is wait a minute. You said your accuracy was 66% compared to your normal of 80%, slightly below your normal of 80%. And I said, since when is 66 only slightly lower than 80%? I mean, to me, if you're slightly below normal, I would say like, all right, then you're 77, 78% you had instead of your normal 80. That's slightly below normal. 60, that's 14% difference from your so-called
You could drive
80%.
a Mac. You could drive a Mack truck through that slightly
Yes,
below
exactly.
that slight difference. Oh
Exactly.
well, everybody has their agenda, I guess. All right, so everybody, you have one thing to do is to have a nice, wonderful Labor Day holiday weekend, and we'll be back Monday night. Joe, congratulations on your daughter's wedding and your wedding anniversary,
Thank
and we'll and also convey congratulations to Mrs. Rayo.
I will
May
certainly do that, and presumably tomorrow, Men's Warehouse says my tux will be ready. I hope so. If it's not ready tomorrow, and we're leaving for the nuptials on Saturday, so maybe I won't be wearing a tuxedo. Maybe I'll just wear a T-shirt or something. I don't know.
All right, everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday at 7:35. Nighty night.
Nighty night.